Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, or evening, or whenever the heck you're watching this. Not legal advice. Like, subscribe, share, comment, show plants, animals, pets, dogs, cats, fish, whatever. Today, I'm going to talk about a little bit about following up on GTI senior management. I put senior in quotation marks, and that's coming from a senior, but these are very senior. We're going to talk about that a little bit and about the PR that they put out and how that relates to the complaint that I filed and how that relates to my accusations or claims of incompetence, a clown show of management that I think ultimately will benefit shareholders, ironically. But before I go start talking about that, just a couple of points before we get started. What's the best part of old age? It doesn't last very long. And what's the secret to having a smoking hot body as a senior? Cremation. And last but not least, what underwear do seniors love best? It really depends. Anyway, wanted to talk about GTII specifically in management. I've obviously made a bunch of accusations about them. I filed a complaint that was filed on April 8th, I believe April 8th. And in the complaint, I made basic allegations about the board and the CEO, amongst the allegations that they were too old, incompetent, self-interested. They were running a clown show, not interested in investors, cheap, favoring insiders and family members, and it basically was bozo. All that was reflected in my complaint that was filed on April 8th. And I think I mentioned that I started my direct contact with them early February with the intention of trying to get management to get out, to permit somebody to go in that could generate what the company is supposed to do. It's supposed to be an acquisition company. That's its mission statement. And appeared the way the current management was running things, they were not running it in the best interest of shareholders, had not generated any revenue, contrary to the mission statement. And I was informed there were literally billions of dollars of deals available that they somehow passed on, didn't do diligence, weren't willing to spend money on, along with other things. And I knew that if management could be sacked, that new management would be able to undertake some of these acquisitions because of the concentrated short position in GTII, that if an acquisition occurred, that would spur the stock to go forward. This is all my opinion, by the way, not legal advice, not financial advice. And it was only the CEO who perhaps was too old, too cheap, too incompetent, or whatever, and he wasn't doing what needed to be done. And the question would be, under those circumstances, why would any entity want to engage or be engaged with GTII? And it appeared, based upon my conversations with various people connected to entities that wanted to do deals with GTII, who reached out to me directly, that in part it was the concentrated short position that existed in GTII. And even though there's no guarantee of any kind of short squeeze, all these potential targets thought that because of the concentrated short position, that if there was an acquisition, that there might be a huge bump, and if that they had somehow acquired stock in GTII in the acquisition process, that they would benefit from that. And that's why there was such an interest in this company that I deemed was not being run properly. So, I was very confident in my position based upon all the people that contacted me, based upon what I heard, based upon the net revenue of GTII over the past couple of years, based upon my own dealings with them since February. But, you never really know. But I basically told the board of directors that, I was going to pursue this and I wouldn't leave. And I thought that GTI stock would explode if they got out. And I said I would follow through. So in one of my videos that I've posted at some point in time, I referenced that that in this process, starting in February, that they're, after obtaining many delays from me based on my good faith and based upon my intentions to permit them to do the right thing, that it ended up that on the 7th, they were going to get together and they were going to discuss and potentially approve a deal in which management was going to step down. So, and I thought that was a good thing. So I gave them the chance to that. And I've told all defendants, all management, that if they ended up ratting out their fellow defendants or other management, that I would give them a release. And they specifically, I would direct it at ratting out the CEO and other top executives as named in the complaint that I'd filed. And I told them, and at this, I'm going to repeat this to any director, officer of Gtii currently, feel free to reach out to me, rat out your other officers and directors, and if you do so, I'll give you a release, so you won't have to worry about any legal entanglements. But I also warned all directors and officers that if they sold any more stock, and they were selling stock per a stock plan, so you can set up a plan that sells stock at a certain rate at a certain time automatically, and you don't actually physically have to manually do a sale. And that's done so that you have a defense to insider trading, but it's based upon a good faith belief to start off with. So you have to have good faith to start the plan. And I assert that none of these people have good faith, especially the CEO, just my opinion, in the stock plan. But it's a way for them to generate a substantial amount of income, push the stock price down, unfortunately, by selling because they're not buying, and work and benefit their self-interest. And I know there's accusations, I've heard accusations, that the senior executives have benefited themselves, insiders, perhaps family members, not done things out of cost basis, or some people might say because they're too cheap. But all that has been in the wind. So how do I know that what I said about claims of incompetence and improper actions by the very senior management, as referenced in my April 8th complaint, how do I know that what I claim is true? Well, you know what? Nicely enough, Gtii management admitted it. And I have to thank them for doing that. Although I don't understand why admitting to incompetence in a public document benefits investors, but I appreciate it because it puts it out there and puts another nail in the coffin as to why senior management should no longer be there. Now, how do I know, or where am I talking about their admissions? It's in the April 9th. This is the PR that they put out on April 9th. So remember, I filed my complaint on April 8th. So I deem this PR a direct response to my accusations that management's too old, incompetent, self-interested, etc. So, but I don't know why they would publicly admit this. Doesn't seem to be an interest of themselves, because they could have liability. Doesn't seem to be interested in shareholders, because it might create doubt, at least temporarily. But it just kind of is further evidence that we have a set of clowns running Gtii at this point in time. So what does the PR say? What it says is, and I'm going to read from it now. It refers to the board of directors meeting. Now, my understanding, on April 7th. So it acknowledges there, in fact, was a board meeting on April 7th. Now, I'm a shareholder. I didn't get any notice of that. And I don't know if they have to provide notice, but they didn't provide notice to all shareholders. Perhaps they should have. Perhaps that's required. Don't know. And they acknowledge that they did have a board meeting, but instead of discussing the exit of senior management, and again, I put senior in quotation marks, they hired Mr. Luke Rabari, hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, it's Rahbari, to join the company in the position effective May 1 as Chief Operating Officer. So it's a new position, obviously attempting to deal with the claims that I made of incompetence of senior management. Now, the problem with Mr. Rabari is he was the consultant that I conversed with earlier in the year who was supposed to, let's say, manage GTII and its opportunities. Now, in my discussion, and it's in a prior video, it's also in an email I sent to the Council for Management for GTII about a month ago, I was super unimpressed with Mr. Rabari. I thought, based on my conversation and based upon conversations with others, that he had no interest, zero, in doing any transactions for GTII. In fact, some people I spoke with questioned whose interest actually he was carrying out. I even had some people claim that he was working for the shorts based upon his position. Now, I don't know, but all I know is that in my dealings with him, as I documented at the time, I was super unimpressed. So the fact that he was engaged as the CEO doesn't give me any comfort, although it does acknowledge, just by his engagement, that management deems that they're not capable themselves of doing what needs to be doing what needs to be done. Now, besides hiring Mr. Rabari, management, and again, I don't know why they're publicly acknowledging this, but they say that Mr. Rabari will be involved in refocusing the short-term goals of management. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what short-term goals means. If you are talking about senior leadership that is approaching 80, are you talking about 6 months, 3 months? Are you talking about years? Another vague point. But my claim was that management's way too old. And the next part of the PR acknowledges that, because it says that part of Mr. Rabari's involvement is developing a retirement succession plan for its senior management. So, in essence, in a public document, the management who I claim is too old and too competent acknowledges that they're too old and too incompetent. But they've hired somebody who I personally don't deem has the best interests of shareholders in mind, based upon my own dealings and based upon my own opinions. So he's involved in the retirement and succession plan. He's also, they acknowledge and admit that Mr. Rabari has made management aware of several deficiencies in its current structure and day-to-day operations. So publicly, they're acknowledging that their structure and operations are deficient. Now, in my complaint, I allege that their structure and the management, in effect, is deficient. So they have, again, publicly admitted that they didn't do things right, and they're bringing in somebody to make those corrections. Now, they claim that they acted quickly, but to the contrary, I believe they've been sitting on it, but for being called out on the rug, they wouldn't have done diddly. So they've admitted that management's too old. They admitted they made numerous mistakes in structure and day-to-day operations. And they go on to say, so that's, to me, a direct admission that what I'm stating in my complaint, they don't deal with the looting and the self-interest, et cetera, because I guess they decided that would be too dangerous to admit. But they do admit, basically, that they're incompetent. They also acknowledge that, or claim that Mr. Rabari is there to assess, and I'm reading directly, assessing the quality of a number of pending deals for the company. Now, I'm not aware, and I've dealt with people who claim to have met and tried to offer deals to GTII, and nothing, as far as I know, is pending. I think that's a false or misleading statement. Perhaps the only pending deal was the deal where the senior management was going to be bought out or asked to leave or depart. Maybe that's what they're referring to. But as far as I know, unless there's something out there that they aren't telling me, or unless there's some great deal that's pending that no they haven't discussed with anyone else, that there are no pending deals per se. There are deals that are available, but nothing pending. And based upon my discussions with Mr. Rabari, I wouldn't trust him to undertake any transaction on behalf of GTII. Now, he might prove me wrong, and I'd be happy as a fish, however, how happy fish are, if Mr. Rabari proves me wrong and GTI undertakes an acquisition, because I think that would be beneficial to GTII and management. And perhaps Mr. Rabari has changed his stripes, or his support comes from a different position. And perhaps there's a deal that's going to go forward. But all I can say is, based upon my dealings with Mr. Rabari, I wouldn't have hired him to be in this position. But hopefully he'll prove me wrong. And hopefully he will correct the deficiencies in the operations and legal structure of GTII. And by the way, the attorney for GTII, Mr. Fattel, also acknowledged these deficiencies in my communications early on. And again, I don't know why he's telling me about deficiencies in structure, et cetera. Makes no sense. But acknowledge that sometimes companies, especially small companies, don't do what's needed. And I know in this case, there's been allegations that they didn't do what's needed because perhaps senior management was too cheap. That's the allegation. So Mr. Rabari is apparently assessing the quality of a number of deals, and he's assisting in continuing the mission to remain compliant in all its filings and obligations. Now, I don't know if they have been compliant in all of its filings and obligations. In fact, I heard to the contrary. And I heard, in fact, that maybe some of the actions made the ability of GTII more difficult in terms of raising capital. So it remains to be seen what needs to be done to make GTII compliant in all its filings and obligations. But there's a suggestion in the PR that perhaps they have not been. And I believe that was an intentional choice not to be, or not to become compliant. And again, I don't believe, unless they were called out, that they would be doing any of this. So that's what the PR says. I think it directly backs up what I claimed in my complaint. And I will give Mr. Rabari, since I don't have an opportunity to make that choice, the opportunity to show me that I'm wrong. But if I see that he's just chugging along and senior management continues to, in my opinion, loot the company, we're not going to stand for that. And if Mr. Rabari receives stock or sells stock, he's going to be another defendant in my matter, if it suits well. And if Mr. Rabari wants to flip on the CEO or on other directors and come to me and protect his interest, I'm happy to engage with him, and I would welcome that contact. So now you know why management must go. And when they go, it's my belief, based upon what potential suitors of GTI say, that it will take off. So I'm hugely, and this is just my opinion, not financial advice, bullish on GTII, and believe that current management needs to retire to an assisted living facility out in the desert. They stay on their butts until all GTII shareholders get satisfaction, or that's as much as I encourage. They really need to leave. And the acknowledgement and the creation of the position of new COO is confirmation of that. And I wish they would have consulted shareholders, provided notice before they made that change, but we will stay on top of that. And I appreciate the fact that they admitted to the allegations of my complaint in the PR. And unfortunately, these people should retire and move on. Anyway, That's it for today. If you are interested, take a look at yourself at that PR dated 4/9. I think it has interesting information, and I'll keep you apprised of my litigation as it goes on. And again, to any officer, director, management person, Mr. Rabari, who wants to flip on the others based upon their misconduct or based upon my opinion of misconduct, reach out to me. I'll give you a release. You won't have any liability. You won't have to hire a lawyer. And we'll go from there. Be well. Have a good day. Take care. Talk to you later.